You are listening to the Lending Edge podcast, hosted by Scott Rose. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lending Edge podcast. I'm your host, Scott Rose, and really appreciate you joining in. On today's episode, I got to sit down last week while at the MBA live with Shawn Telford. I've had him on the show before, but we just thought it'd be nice to talk a little bit about the event, some of the main issues going on, announcements, etc. This was really informal. Apologize about some of the recording quality, but hopefully you'll enjoy the conversation. And if you weren't at the MBA, this will give you a little insight into what was going on last week in Denver. With that said, thanks again for joining and enjoy the show.
Mr. Telford.
How's it going?
Good.
Mr. Rose.
This will be fun to do a little live.
Yeah. It's fun to be in person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So we're at the MBA
We're at the MBA.
in Denver.
Yep.
Impressions so far?
One of the busier MBAs, I think, since COVID is my guess.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that people are stabling out a little bit from the doom and gloom of the market the last 2 years, right?
Yeah. There's definitely some hope.
Yeah.
I saw the MBA forecast came out, which I think was 28% up,
I
which
saw.
a little bit aggressive.
I think it's.
maybe.
I think it's a little over optimistic, right? What they say they went from expected this year 1.79 trillion market to 2.3 trillion next year. I think
It's all good.
Good job, man.
Yeah, I think we all like some more activity, but yeah, there's a lot of things I think we need to fall into place.
I agree.
And we won't even touch on politics because
Yes,
that would be
because none of us know what's going to happen until after that. And
you can't win there.
you
man.
can't. No, we
Just prepare for
let's
either
avoid that
way.
conversation completely.
Exactly.
But I think the one thing that has been pretty common is I don't think people are making decisions based off of a potential market next year. Like, most people are expecting that you have to run your business based off of the potential that we're going to continue to see pretty low transaction volume through 2025.
Yeah, you can't bank on it.
No,
Yeah.
even based off of what rates may or may not do. I don't think anybody's expecting a major drop in rates
Right.
in the next year still.
Yep.
So
Yep.
what about you?
Yeah, I concur that I'm hopeful that the market's return. I think in certain areas of the country, like everything's local, there's going to be demand will increase. I'm no economist, but the supply side hasn't really changed much. And I know that's a constraint. The lock-in effect you hear about with people with the low interest rates, they're not going to move or, put the house on the market unless they have to.
I feel like that has to be real. I mean,
Oh,
even
yeah.
just me personally, why would I ever change you're at a under 3% fixed rate? You'd have to spend so much more
Right.
for the same type of home to live in. Wouldn't be worth it.
It's an interesting time, man.
Yeah. And then obviously, I think probably from an appraisal perspective, the big news of the week is going to be the extended eligibility from FHFA on waivers and inspection-based waivers.
Yep.
Talked about earlier this morning.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that was a surprise. I think we could all see that directionally that's where the GSE's FHFA was heading. But
Yeah.
I don't know. First thoughts or any impressions on how that impacts, from the appraiser perspective, from the lender perspective, I guess, consumer.
I think it'll be seen in the future what the real impact will be.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of other eligibility requirements around waivers that it's not like it's opening up to everything that's 90% LTV and below, or with inspection-based waivers, the 97%. I still think there's going to be quite a bit of other factors that play into that will limit the amount of waivers in that population. But I think it's going to have an impact. Yeah,
sure.
It's going to definitely affect the addressable appraisal market. And we already see it now, right? If you look at a couple weeks in September when we saw the rates come down a bit, and we saw refi applications pick up. From a mortgage perspective, they saw a pretty big jump in their pipeline. But from an appraisal perspective, we saw a little blip. We're probably only getting 30% of the refi population as appraisers now.
Yeah, I know back during the COVID times, I know there was a very large percentage. The majority of the refis, I believe, received a waiver, and it was used by the lenders in those scenarios, which obviously I think we've discussed before. In certain lending scenarios, it makes total sense, right? It's a low risk loan. You already have the loan. If you're the GSE, you're not taking on any new risk. You're theoretically reducing your risk by lowering the rate.
Yeah.
And I think there's a place where it makes sense. And then there, with the expansion, I think it starts to move into areas where I think some people might be uncomfortable. Like you said, the utilization and how it helps and works, it still remains to be seen.
Yeah. And I think they're trying to, make the benefit of the waiver more, what's the word I'm looking for? A broader market participant, more universal.
Yeah, and I think they called out specifically in their press release that there would be more, it would be more first-time home buyers,
correct,
and others that weren't traditionally benefiting from that.
That's right.
Would benefit from the waivers, which I think everyone wants more people to own homes.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I shouldn't say everyone, that's a little broad, but certainly home ownership is a benefit. So helping people get in homes makes sense.
What do you think about other things going on around appraisal modernization right now? Have you been hearing anything about that while you've been here?
There's UAD, the perpetual evergreen topic of the UAD and appraisal modernization in general, but specifically UAD. It's pretty clear that there's much more awareness from the lender side that they need to do something to get ready. That seems to be a discussion. There's a lot of talk about, are the GSE or are the vendors going to be ready? At CoreLogic, we're obviously heavily focused on taking care of our customers and getting ready, and we're on track to meet the timeline expectations.
Speaking of timeline expectations, I believe they've now come out with a deadline for mandatory 3.6 implementation for lenders.
Yeah, I haven't heard an official date. I've heard rumors.
I can look it up.
But I know that originally they said sometime in 2026. So
they've released yesterday actual dates for where, let me find it here while I'm looking.
So we know that lenders, the pilots are slated to start in the second half of 2025, right? The limited lender production window.
Yep. So the limited production window is now September 8th, 2025 through January 25th, 2026. They moved to broad production January 26th through November 1st of 2000. And then mandate is November 2nd, 2020.
Okay.
So any appraisal submitted as of November 2nd, 2026 will be required only to submit in 3.6. In January 26th to November 1st, they're saying you can submit 2.6 or 3.6. And I think the reason that they're doing that is to allow for the time period, the tail.
Yeah, the
appraisal,
legacy. Sure.
So you could still, if you had an appraisal done previously in 2.6, you could still submit it, right?
So new loans submitted after November 1st, 2026 would need to be in the 3.6 format, the new UAD.
Yeah, and November 2nd, 2026, you're mandated to do 3.6.
Got it.
And then they're retiring 2.6 pipeline needs to be cleared, and it'll be closed on May 3rd, 2027. So that, I think, is actually where they're putting the time in. So if an appraisal was done previously to November 2nd in 2.6, you would still have time to submit that on a loan period or whatever for the effective date on the appraisal. So I think that's important, right? Because now there's no longer this open question of when the mandate is going to be. And so people are going to have to start preparing.
Yeah. And as we know, with large lenders and small and medium size. They need to, those dates will help them back into
Great.
their runway to get ready. So
Do you guys have, like with FNC or Mercury or any of the platforms, Appraisal Scope, etc., underneath the CoreLogic umbrella, have you released any sort of documentation on how you plan to handle the order management side, like of 3.6, or is it more on all mode that they're been focused on preparing for the appraisal software to support 3.6? And I guess you have all the QC technology too.
Right.
You've got a lot going on, of course.
It's end to end, right? It's
Yeah.
everything from the front end order process, the appraiser assignment process, the appraiser delivery and manufacturing process, the review process, and then
Yeah.
deliver back to the UCDP portal, which is updated, and for the lenders, however they see fit, and all the different stakeholders in between, from appraisers to AMCs to lenders to secondary market. Yeah, our a la mode folks have been heavily engaged in this for over a year. They're
Probably where the biggest impact is in the appraisal software, or do you think it's equally impactful for everybody
That's a
downstream?
good. I would say all of our systems are impacted. There's
Yeah.
not. It's a huge impact because for many years our systems have been built around data. The legacy FNC business that's part of CoreLogic now, there was a data standard that they put in place in the early 2000s. The systems have been processing AI ready, and then we also can process the MISMO 2.6. So all of that has to be retooled
Yeah.
to process the 3.6, which is a similar but different approach. So and the changing of the forms.
Just gonna say everything's been built around forms too.
Yep.
Like you order an appraisal, you order a form type.
I like to say the forms are the cheat codes. If
Yeah.
you know the form, you just get it done. So now that's changed. And yeah, a la mode is very committed. I continue to be impressed with those guys and how focused they are on getting it right and working with the appraisers to make sure that they have all the tools they need and all the tools that they value. The integrations to MLSs, the comp selection and searching, the peers, all of that tools, the field-based inspection tools, Smart Sketch,
Yeah.
all that
tools.
is ready to go when the appraisers need to be ready to go.
Yeah.
And so forth. And then of course the platforms business is doing the same thing. Our product team has done a great job working with industry participants to ensure that how appraisals are ordered without form numbers, that there's a general accepted way to do that.
So
that
how are you guys thinking about that? Can you expand on that at all? Or
I can tell you my limited knowledge, being not directly in it.
yeah.
The notion of ordering switches from the form to characteristics of the property. So whether it's a single family home, attached or detached, condo, PUD, 1, 2 to 4, those characteristics of the property have to be known at the time of the order, as well as some other characteristics that affect how the appraiser would choose the appropriate scope of work, or how the appraiser would determine that they're competent. And also, it's important for the lenders to understand the characteristics of the property, physical characteristics of what it is before they order, because they need to make sure the appraisers that get that assignment are appropriately qualified, right? And that's also goes for their AMC partners,
Yeah.
who they often delegate those duties to. And so that's critical and important. And so we're working on a standardized way to simplify that for our integrated partners.
Yeah.
To simplify that. But it's going to be different. I know the GSEs are also looking they'll update the messaging in DU and LP when a lender submits a loan, and today it returns back a message that says this one needs the 1004. There'll be information that'll say, for example, you need to order a URAR, Uniform Residential Appraisal Report, which is the same for any property type, single family to 1 to 4. And then it'll tell them the scope of work that's required. For example, does this one require the appraiser to personally inspect the interior of the home. Does this assignment require the appraiser to do an exterior only, or is this eligible for a desktop, or is the appraiser being asked to do a hybrid?
Yeah, so the hybrid will flow right into the same URAR form as well. It'll
exactly
all not really form. It's really
the same reporting format
yeah.
will be used for all those different types of the scope of work. So yeah, it's a massive undertaking for the industry. So these dates that you mentioned are important at helping push the industry to getting all their systems ready.
I agree with that. Yeah.
You know?
I think leaving it open-ended, just let people say that we'll deal with it when it comes, right? That 2026 plus, I think, was left a big question mark of, was that 2028? And now everybody knows, no, this is coming, this is going to happen, and we're all going to have to be prepared for it.
And I know the GSEs have also been getting a message out, or working to, that this isn't just an appraiser. This isn't something that it's going to be just appraisers and AMCs that are impacted.
No.
Right? And not they'll bear the brunt of a lot of the work, but the lenders must also be ready.
Yeah.
You know, they have to train underwriters to review the new report formats.
Yeah.
Train the folks that work on the ordering processes. Make sure their integrations with LOSs and whatnot will pass the right information from the LOS system or the point of sale system into the collateral management systems and out to the AMCs and appraisers. And I mean, there's a lot of touch points out there.
Yeah, but even think about that too. I mean, we don't talk about it often, but secondary market impacts. All these folks, when loans are being traded in the secondary market and there's due diligence being done on those and all the systems and things they use to analyze appraisals to look for potential risk. Now they're going to have to change their technology platforms to support a new 3.6 as well.
Exactly. You know, they can't use the forms as cheat codes. You know, it's say, well, all these all these loans in this pool have 1004 appraisals or full appraisals. Well, that's a different way to understand that. I think sometimes the impacts are going to be, the reality of the impact won't be huge, but you have to understand that impact on the front end.
Yeah. Remember when we used to do due diligence and paper appraisal files?
Oh yeah. Get locked in a room with some data.
Or then they started scanning them and sending scanned copies of PDFs in black and white to go through.
I remember when I first experienced OCR technology, and I thought how cool that was. Sadly, some cases we haven't moved that much.
No, we haven't.
And it's, I do think one of the questions that somebody asked me the other day was, well, is all of this change going to move appraisers off of clipboards and tape measures when they go to the house?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
For mortgage work,
the
ability to collect all the data you need when you're at the house. If you're not using a tablet or a mobile device, you will not, you'll miss things, because the way you fill the form out is iterative, and depending on your answer, you may have 2 or 3 more questions.
Yeah, and I think it's important too that I could foresee a world, I know this might not be a popular opinion, but where appraisers don't visit properties as much anymore, and it's more of a data collection network out there using technologies to do that. And you and I have talked a little bit about appraisers' tendencies to go to C4, Q4, right? The GSEs have data that show that tendency. And now with all of the imagery that's included in appraisals, even in traditional appraisals, appraisers use pretty high, the phone now produces high quality imagery.
Absolutely.
And now we have all these image recognition tools out there identifying whether or not the condition ratings are accurate or not accurate. And there's a little bit more pressure, maybe it's not the right word, but definitely more pressure to have a more accurate rating of that property and to support your assessments.
It's all about transparency, objectivity, consistency. The appraisers, I think what's changed in my observation is lenders have data and information and tools now that they didn't have 15 years ago. So 15 years ago, the appraiser was the individual who collected the data, provided the images.
Yeah.
Now lenders have access to data, images from all kinds of sources. So they can validate or
Which is important too,
Right.
to jump in for a second. If a lender has, let's just say, we'll use Fannie Mae as an example. Freddie has similar components, but if you get a 2.5 CU score or lower, then you get value, rep, and warrant relief on repurchase protection, right? However, that doesn't protect you if there's property characteristics that are misrepresented.
right.
So it's very important to the lender to know and ensure that the property condition ratings and the property characteristics that have been captured are accurate,
Absolutely.
because otherwise it causes downstream risk.
The lender is ultimately responsible for the data that's in the appraisal
Yeah,
and submitted. It's not something that they can delegate
to the appraiser.
or to an AMC, right?
Correct.
Those are parties that can help them in the collection and the validation,
Yes,
but ultimately the lender remains responsible.
that's right.
Needless to say, there's a whole lot going on
Yeah,
in the
actually,
appraisal world.
quite a bit announced this week too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, UAD 3.6 now has deadline. Waivers went on purchase from 80% to 90% LTV eligibility.
Yeah.
And IBWs, inspection-based waivers,
Yeah.
right, or property data collection and the waiver combined. So your value acceptance plus data
Yeah.
and your ACE plus PDR, right?
Yeah.
Those both went from 80 to 97%
Yep.
LTV, which
Yep.
is probably going to have a big impact, I think. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
What that does.
It's, I know there's always consternation when there's change. I think, as we discussed earlier, we know there's a lot of circumstances where waivers make sense.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be interesting to see how this all kind of pans out over the next few years. I know we've talked about this multiple times, that the value appraisers bring hasn't necessarily changed, right? I think what's changed is the data and the information and the understanding of risk on the lender side has changed to where the lenders are using appraisers differently than they used to in the past.
Yeah.
They can collect the data differently. There remains, in my opinion, strong value when the appraisers are able to analyze data, when they're able to use their unique skills to process through the data and help lenders and others understand the opinions. And I think that's where, I've been saying for a long time, I feel that's the unique value that appraisers bring.
Yeah. I mean, look, all of us probably wish to a degree from a profession perspective that we were still getting appraisals on all refinance transactions, right? That was a lot of potential addressable market that's no longer there, but the world changes. And to our earlier conversation, the reality is that it isn't necessary. If somebody just acquired a home in the last 3 or 4 years, they have a lot of data and information on that property, they're a great credit-worthy borrower, you're just reducing their rate and actually making the loan less risky. Do you really need to get an appraisal?
Exactly.
But I think the appraiser's need will be more complex. I think that the work will be harder. It'll be more complex properties that are coming.
It'll require analysis. It'll require I think, to the benefit of appraisers, learning to use all the new technologies to up their skill set in how they use these tools to analyze data to provide an opinion of value.
Yeah.
There remains value in that for sure.
And making sure that we continue to provide value to the stakeholders so that we continue to have a viable profession. But
Yep. Awesome.
thanks for spending some time with me, man.